Questions from last week.
Homework.
My homework, not yours. So somebody asked me, what does the prayer shawl say? Who asked that?
Gretchen, I think.
Gretchen. Was that you, Gretchen?
I think so.
Okay, I'm like, I looked at it and I'm like, why didn't I know that? It's the pretty traditional Hebrew beginning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe. But then it goes into the rest of it. It says, who has sanctified us by the commandments, mitzvah, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, son or daughter of the commandment. That's on here. And commanded us to wear the tzitzit. So the last word is tzitzit. So I should have known that is the typical blessing that you would expect. A lot of the blessings in Hebrew are going to, if not all of them, begin that. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe. And then it goes from there. If you remember when we did the Seder together, almost every one of the blessings for every piece of it starts that way. And then it gets specific. Who gives us bread from the earth, or who blah, 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 blah. So that's pretty typical. So there you go. That's question number one. Question number two was about the Talmud. When did it end? I think that was Anne's question, right? So it's a very good question. And the simple answer is between 480 and 500 AD, the Talmud itself stopped. 2,711 pages divided into 6 sections. Each of the sections is called a Seder. The reason we call it Passover Seder, it just means order. So 2,711 pages in the Talmud. Between 480 and 500 AD was codified. Ravina Bar Rav is kind of the one for that. But if you remember, we also had, I think it's on one of the slides. Maybe get there. Oh yeah, the Mishnah is that 2,711 pages. The Gemara is the commentary on the Mishnah. So if you were to go and buy a full Talmud, say 2,711 pages, that's not that much. That's not huge. But because of the Gemara, do I have a picture? This is a Hebrew English bookshelf that is the Talmud and the Gemara. So these are big books. They're not super thick, they're narrow, but the size of a bookshelf. So that interpretive part really is about the Middle Ages, when if you bought this about the middle 1600s is when the commentary is going to stop in a printed edition. But for some, they say it's still an ongoing conversation, because if you were to read the commentary, it is very conversational. In fact, if you go to study it, one of the ways they study it with sing-song, answering back and forth as they go through different sections. So the Talmud itself, that 2,711 pages, is considered the oral tradition that was given through Moses. Exodus 34:34, didn't mention this last week, is one of the texts the Hebrews used. Exodus 30, we're still kind of in the Mount Sinai type time. We haven't moved very far. So it tells us this about Moses. Whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. The next verse tells us when he came out, he glowed. And when he came out, he told the Israelites what had been commanded. So he goes up to the mountain and he gets the Torah, the written law. And then this is one of the places where the Israelites said God kept speaking to Moses and he communicated it orally. And that oral tradition, that is the Talmud, is passed down through a very particular rabbinic line of succession. In fact, I looked that up as well, because I was just getting crazy about things. You ask questions and I go off the deep end. Where is that? I know it's in here somewhere. So the source of the Talmud is from God to Moses, Moses to Joshua, Joshua to the elders of Israel to the prophets, And that ends about the 5th century with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. And then from there, if there's the men of the great assembly. So after Ezra comes back and begins to get things back together, tries to rebuild, Nehemiah rebuilds the wall, Ezra rebuilds the temple. But there's not a priest, there's a priestly class, but it's just kind of a general men of the great assembly. There are no prophets anymore. And then I could read all these names to you that wouldn't mean anything until maybe we get to the 1st century BC, when a guy by the name of Hillel, 2 rabbis, Hillel and Shammai, are considered to be the ones who are bearing this tradition that was passed down through Moses. And actually what happens in Judaism is there's a bit of a split because Hillel and Shammai don't always agree. And so Hillel becomes the dominant train. And after Hillel comes a guy I know you heard of because he's in the Bible, Gamaliel is thought to be in the line of succession of the recording of this oral tradition. So when Paul says, I trained under Gamaliel, he's considered like not just a smart guy. I mean, he's the one that's responsible for passing the tradition from Moses down. And then really it drops off about the 2nd century because that's when they begin to put it down in writing. And by the 480, 500, it's all compiled, 2,711 pages. So is that
They didn't write this down until that period, really.
They couldn't go to Office Depot and get pens and paper.
Oh, of course. I'm just wondering, would the scribes pick up, and you just answer, I'm surprised it was that late history.
So yes, well, I mean,
Otherwise, they had to put it on stones, I guess.
well, they had parchment, they had sheepskins.
What's scrolls?
Oh yeah, they have scrolls, but they're not simply produced. They're not readily available.
Right.
Not everybody reads and writes.
Because obviously Jesus even said, he's handed a scroll and
Right.
says, I just read this and.
And the scrolls were only at places of worship.
Right.
If you wouldn't likely have a scroll in your home, because the scrolls are huge to
Have you ever
produce.
seen one? So cool.
And there's usually a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I have a small one.
Yeah. And the
So
was it the Holocaust Museum? Is that where we saw the really, really big ones?
yeah, we saw some.
Yeah.
There's, in fact, the Keys Jewish Community Center, their Torah scroll is a Holocaust scroll on loan from one of the museums.
Wow.
It is very cool. I went down there for a couple things and he said, if you want to come up and see the scroll, I'm like,
Right up with the ink pen or?
with a stylus of some kind. Yeah, it's, so we just might as well do that. Why go in order? So I brought, this is a very small copy of a Torah scroll. And this is how, if you were in a temple or a tabernacle or synagogue, whatever, there would be like an armoire somewhere at the front, and the doors would always face Jerusalem. It's very important. The doors of it's called the Ark, that the Torah scroll or scrolls are kept in.
Say, a lot of times they only had one scroll with them.
Well, sometimes they have multiple.
There's
Right,
the
I mean,
one
that's
all
all
in
in
DC or
sides, but well, that got
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talked about the Hebrew Bible, you remember why is there 1st and 2nd Kings? Because they couldn't put all of it on one scroll. So there's 2 scrolls, one for 1st Kings, one for 2nd Kings. We divide it. For them, it's one book. It just ran out of paper. Because you can only string together so many pieces of parchment or sheepskin before it just is unwieldy or too heavy. So if you were looking at, if we were in a tabernacle, it would probably be like this size.
Right.
Okay, it would be big, and there would be this ark, and they would bring it out of the ark. This is called the breastplate. It's meant to be modeled after the breastplate that the high priest would wear. Not if you look at it and read in the law, this one doesn't have the same ornamentation. Doesn't have the 12 stones or whatever. It does have a representation of the 10 Commandments on it. So sometimes they'll have a metal breastplate on it. And then they have this, which is called the yod. I don't know if you can see from this far away. Yod means hand in Hebrew. And if you see, it's a little pointy finger. So it's a little pointy finger. And this is what they would use when they read it. They just use it to follow along so they know where they are. So these are usually hung across. And then The scroll was kept inside usually a very ornamental case, metallic thread. This is called a mantle. I noticed, what does that one say? I tried. This is all I got. This word in the middle is Torah. The last word is shalom, the last half here. This is a conjunction that means yet or verily. This means from Zion. I don't remember what this word is, Torah. So I couldn't quite decipher it because it's been a while, and the way they write letters, the way they throw the little serifs on them, it's hard to. So I'm sorry, I got to brush up. But it sounds like it's saying that this, verily God from Zion sent the Torah, and then something that we should have shalom. So that's over it. They take the mantle off, and they will have some sort of sash to hold it together. So they'll take that off, and then I forgot to mention the scroll, but when it's in the mantle, always has crowns. This one has crowns. That's how you know it's the top. The crowns are on the top. Sometimes it's another piece that fits over the Torah scroll on the mantle. This one just builds them in because, this is I got it on Amazon. It's from Jerusalem, but I got it on Amazon. And then inside is just the text. When I saw the one at the Jewish Community Center, you could see the seams, because this is a modern reproduction. We have rolls and rolls of paper that you can just print on. I don't have that back then. It's somehow seamed together. And those seams become important because as they were recording the words by hand at the time on these scrolls, if there is a mistake, they got no whiteout or no backspace on the computer. They would remove that entire section of the scroll and put a new parchment or new sheepskin in and start copying over. It's crazy, right? This is not an easy, quick 1999 because we can make a million of them. To have in Jesus's day, let's say, to have a scroll. Do you want me to pass this around? Do you want to see it up closer? Do you care?
We'll take your word for it.
I can't digitally pass it around, so I'm sorry. But it's kind of cool. For Jesus to go to a synagogue and have a scroll, that was huge. I had a good friend in high school who was Jewish. His family, did bar mitzvahs for his little brother, and got to go to a few. And I've been to a few synagogue service. Anybody been to a Jewish synagogue service? Here's the thing that stuck with me. So the service is primarily going to be prayer, ritual prayers, and the reading of Torah. That's what's going to happen. But when it's time to read the Torah, a party breaks out, at least in the few I've been to. Like the music cranks up and people are all excited, and the priest dances up and opens the ark, and he pulls out, still in the mantle, the scroll, and he goes around the synagogue, goes up and down the aisles, and people crowd to the middle, and the guys will have their prayer shawl or talit on, and they'll kiss their shawl, and we just want to touch that Torah scroll as it goes by. And they're singing and they're dancing. You'd think it was a charismatic church when you're there. They're just having a big time. Shouldn't be stepping on it. And it really made an impression on me. That the point of that moment in their service is we are about to hear the words from God, and what greater moment of joy could there be in our assembly? And it is just, it's remarkable to see that, to be a part of that. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, the neighborhood I grew up in was predominantly, well, not predominantly, it's Jew. And all my buddies, a lot of them Jews, little kids, grade school up. Junior high school. We would go to their, when they would read from Torah, and that was a big day. And we would
When they got to go up and read.
Like the kids, 7, 8, 9, and that was a big day.
And did they do the parade around?
Everything you just explained, I had to witness because I had like 12 buddies Jewish in the neighborhood. And it was, just to try. But, it was, I was raised, Methodist. And just to witness that was great. And then when we got to the point in our lives where they did the teenagers became men, let's call them
Bar mitzvah,
bar mitzvah.
son of the commandment.
It was no holds barred for each bar mitzvah. And then,
It's a big deal.
oh,
My friend in high school, his dad was a doctor, so his was at the Contemporary Resort Disney, and I got to go.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it was a big
that's a
deal.
big deal.
You rent out a room at the Contemporary Resort at
Yeah.
Disney for your 12-year-old's party.
Did Mickey Mouse show up?
No.
Plus.
Mickey is not Jewish. He hasn't been circumcised. He couldn't come.
They could go.
Did I hear a question online or a noise online? No, y'all just play it. Okay. So it's really remarkable to see that,
It is.
and to be a part of that.
It's very impressive.
And it's humbling because how many of these do you have in your house? Or on your digital device, right? I mean, we have so much access. And I know a modern Jewish person does too. But when you try to think back to the days of, let's just say Jesus, because as Christians, certainly we spend a lot of time thinking about that when he, as a Jewish boy, goes to temple, or as a young man, 30-year-old man, goes to synagogue, and they bring out the Torah, that was a treat. That was the only time you would see that document. You might have learned it, you might have memorized it, but there's something about that. Unfortunately, I guess I can say, and this can happen to any of us, as much as we would say familiarity or access to the scriptures might lead us to take it for granted, for that tradition, as anything, it can become rote. This is the ceremony we do.
Yeah.
This is the ritual we do. And over time you can miss it, but it made an impression on me because I'd never seen that sort of thing before.
Well, when they brought out the first one I went to, they actually had a scroll from Second World War or something.
Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, that's a
They
big
made
deal
such a
because,
big deal out of this that I was awestruck
well,
because I didn't understand.
when you think about like Jewish Community Center, why is it significant they have a Holocaust scroll? Because that scroll was supposed to be destroyed.
Yeah, that's
And how old it is, he told me it's not, it's not a 1,000-year-old Torah scroll. If it was, they wouldn't have it because that would be pretty delicate. But it has some age. It came out of Poland,
yeah.
and we know what happened in Poland as part of the Holocaust. So, you add that layer of meaning. Anyway, so it's pretty
It
fascinating.
was very
Let me get to the last question because my wife asked it. If I don't answer this one, I'm in trouble. Now remember who has this one. How do women pray?
That's right.
They pray the same way fellows do. They just don't have to wear a shawl.
Okay.
I read a lot about that. Do they wear the shawl? One of the things that is traditional is in the law, women don't wear men's garments. Men don't wear women's garments. The prayer shawl is considered a man's garment, so the women don't wear it. So it's not needed. But the same prayers, the morning prayer, the mid-afternoon prayer, the evening prayer, the Shema, is expected that the women, as much as they are able, would participate in. And this is in their home. This isn't just at synagogue or whatever. This is the normal, regular routine that they would be. There is the exemption for women if you are tending to young children and you can't pray all of these things. We understand. So I did read that there's something of that said in the tradition. I also, a couple of other thoughts. One was looking at the number of times that significant events were marked by what could be considered prayers of, certainly songs of praise, but could be seen as prayers of women, whether it's, who is it that sings the song after the Red Sea? Not Moses, it's Miriam, right? And who is it that has the Magnificat? It's not Joseph, it's
Mary.
right? So we have these things. I think you mentioned last week, or somebody did Anna in the temple,
Right.
and her beautiful thing. And then we have Hannah, which we did talk about. So prayer was not it's for the men thing. It was expected to do. The other side of that is what I kind of hinted at about the scriptures is a lot of Jewish prayer is actually ritual prayer. That you pray in the morning and you pray this prayer, almost like we would say in our Christian world as a Catholic. There are certain prayers you pray, certain things that you quote. There is a bit of that. When we think of extemporaneous prayer, which is normal, we just sit down and we pray. There's a little less of that in Jewish tradition. There are 3 requirements, however, for a woman, particularly who is burdened with the concerns of children in the house. If you pray, you must praise God, offer a personal request, and then thank God.
Oh, I love that.
So there you go. That's how women are to pray, which isn't so much different than men.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And I think about the Hannah thing, the reason the priest said, uh-oh, what's wrong with this woman, is because prayer was so programmatic. And she's just over there moving her lips.
Right.
She's not, this isn't the time for prayer. And she's over here and sitting there. Maybe she's drunk, maybe it could just be that she's not following the script. And so, does that answer your questions and satisfy you?
No, I mean, it definitely didn't indicate that they were treated, I mean, obviously we know this.
They were.
Right, yes, we know that, we know that. We know Jesus didn't, and we know God didn't, and we know man did. Don't get me started. But it is, I would like to tell mothers that, this is, if you were gonna pray, praise, what'd you say, praise?
Praise, a personal request, and thanks.
Yeah, that would be a reminder to moms when you're in the throes of it. So I like that.
Are we good on the Talmud? Did that make sense? Okay, who asked the question about the shawl? And then I forget.
It was
Gretchen. That was good. I answered. Okay. I would say, are there more questions? But I'm kind of scared.
I like the story you told about the blue from the snails that they.
Yeah. And the prayer shawl.
Yeah, interesting.
So we've been all over the place and we've been here 30 minutes almost. So I added a couple things. I'm just going to go through this and talk. That's what I added. I think we said this last week about Judaism. It's a very unique faith because to be Jewish can be your faith, but it might not be. It can be your ethnicity, or it can be your culture. And sometimes it's all 3. And in thinking about that, and you can tie this, I was debating if to put it into like worldview or social, or probably worldview. When we talk about it as a faith, we have to understand that there are different ethnic branches of Judaism. 4 big ones. Now remember, when we talk about Judaism in general, it's a very small slice of the religious pie. The first kind is the Ashkenazi Jew, which we're supposed to be. Notice it has Nazi at the end, which I think is interesting. Ashkenazi Jews is the Jewish culture you think of. Bagels, Yiddish, all of that stuff that you think of. These are German and Eastern European Jews. So this is what you think of when you think of Jewish. Another branch of Judaism is the Sephardic Jew, which is Spanish. So large, relatively speaking, Jewish culture in Spain that grew up there. For some of you that have been around a while, I don't know if that's anybody but a few of us, if you remember Janet Lescalit. Her dad, she is Jewish. Her dad he was born in Egypt. He is a Sephardic Jew there. That's their heritage. Spanish background that are also Jewish. The third group are the Mizrahi. These are the Middle Eastern Jews, but not necessarily Israel, because remember, for a lot of time, there was no Israel. Long time. So we're talking Iraq, Persia, now Iran, Yemen, that part of the world. There's an ethnic Jewish group here. The fourth, as far as largest, there's a large Ethiopian Jewish community. About 1,500 years of heritage in Ethiopia of a Jewish community. This group, and somewhat the Sephardic and a little bit the Mizrahi, in the 1980s, 1990s, particularly the Ethiopians wanted to go back to Israel. And just like happens in a lot of places, because of this being the predominant culture, there was plenty of difficulty and discrimination against these other ethnic branches of Judaism. When we think about Jewishness today, this is where most of us are thinking about it, but there are others. There's also some smaller African Jewish places that don't really, stand out, but there are some smaller. But the good news is that these are coexisting much better today. All of the initial prejudice of people coming that hadn't been, the Ashkenazi out of the Holocaust and such, moving back with the reinstatement of the state of Israel. Now that was initially kind of some rivalry / discrimination isn't what it once was, but it's a reminder of human nature. And to say Judaism is unique in that way. When we say we're Christian, there's not an ethnic component to Christianity. You don't think of that, but Jewishness there is, culturally, and so to speak. So I should have mentioned that last week. These are the kind of the areas we did in your notes: ultimate concern, sacred writings, ritual acts. So monotheism. We looked at the Shema of Israel, the sacred writings, the Tanakh, and we've talked a lot about that today already. We talked about that. Ritual acts, we looked at the Sabbath. We've talked a little about with the Torah scroll, how that works. The holy days, the holidays, we went over that last week. Then the moral code, we get to the 10 commandments and the 613 laws. This is where we were last week. We talked about the Talit, the prayer shawl, but tonight we want to talk about the Tefillin, which are what you probably know of as phylacteries. And thanks to Bonnie, we got some. I've been practicing. Yeah.
Roger could do it easy. I can't do it.
Where's my clicker? So here we go. These are the phylacteries. By the way, I can't get this cover off.
I don't know if we can. I don't know if they come.
This one come off. Yeah, these come off. These are covers.
Yeah.
So the other one came off just fine. I don't know if this is glued, so
I don't know.
it looks like it's got glue in it. So
That was Roger, so he made that for a reason.
So yeah, it could have to be loose inside or something.
Yeah.
So where am I going? There we go.
You're
Nope.
using the remote.
That'll never work. Okay, Deuteronomy 6. This is the Shema, a few verses after Hear, O Israel. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on door frames of your houses and your gates. In this bag, and if you know, there is a mezuzah as well. This is what you'll often see in Jewish houses on their doorpost. Inside all of these are small scrolls with, most of the time in the mezuzah, it's the Shema, Deuteronomy 6. In these, there are different passages of scripture. These have 4 different scrolls typically inside of them with different Hebrew scriptures. So this is coming out of Deuteronomy. So we've got these 2. This one is for the head with the shorter straps. This one's for the arm, and I looked this up. So this is how you would put them on. So the one for the arm, you always put on if you're left-handed, you put on your right hand. If you're right-handed, you put on your left arm. And the box itself goes on your bicep, just below your bicep, pointing towards your heart. So you put it on there, and it's got this long strap that you use to kind of tighten it, right? It's a little low, and it has to be touching skin, so you got to roll up your sleeve if that's the case. And then you wrap this long cord a couple of times to hold this in place. There's a knot on it that's very important that always has to stay in touch with the box. I have no idea why, but it has to. So you wrap this a couple of times around the upper arm. And this is, I'm not going to.
Do they wear them all the time?
No, this is for, if you're going to do prayer, the morning prayer, the midday prayer, you put these on.
Stop and put those on.
Yeah.
So you put this on, you say a blessing, and then you start wrapping it. And then the lower arm is really where it gets important. You need 7 wraps around your forearm. Now,
This is
this,
so you can have the word of God on because there's.
Well,
You're in
it's right in the scripture.
Yeah.
So if you are Sephardic or Mizrahi, you always wrap away from you. Ashkenazis wrap towards you. I don't know why, but there's a difference.
It's the way the spin of the earth where they're at.
Yeah.
I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you go to your hand. I think I need to move these up a little bit. They cut off the circulation when you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And you put one there, and then you go to your middle finger, and you wrap across the top of your middle finger, and then you wrap above the knuckle one, and then below the knuckle, and then the next one you go around 3 fingers, and then I haven't wrapped this tight enough, and then you wrap this. I need more line. I'm not going to get it. You wrap this. This is the kind of the cool part I thought was neat. The way you wrap this is supposed to be, there should be one more wrap here. And a W is a Hebrew letter Shah, S-H. This is a D, which is Dalet. And this is a Yod. So Shema, Sheen, Dalet, Yod is the main 3 consonants in the name of God, Shaddai. So you spell one of the names of God if you do it right, which I did not. I did it right 3 times earlier. I did not do it right now. And you'd have that spelled. And so that would be there. And then you take this, you put it on your forehead, and you put the notch just below, you know, that little bone in the back of your head, right below that is supposed to sit. It has to be right like in the middle. Is that?
Yeah.
And then these come over.
Where's your yarmulke?
And you look. What's that?
I think you're gonna get ghost hunting with like a flashlight on your head.
There we go. That's so. I didn't wrap this well. It has plenty of line to do this. So they have this, and they're going to pray with this on. Now, if you know, several years ago we went to Israel and we flew El Al Airlines, and it was full of Hasidic Jews. And when it was time for prayers, even though the cabin lights are off and you're supposed to be sleeping, there was great commotion because all of the men were getting up and getting their tefillin, tied them as symbols, and they began to rap and they began to pray loudly. That was our alarm clock. We had to wake up because there was no getting around. There's no resting. They're getting in the overhead compartments. You know, it's a very important observance for them. They take this very, very seriously. They're much more adept at it than I just demonstrated. But it is all of it you see is very ritual. Like the knot has to stay on the box. It's not supposed to touch your skin. The knot on the head is the letter Dalet. I don't remember what the D on the head stands for, but you spell the name of God. 7 in scripture is a very symbolic number. So that's why we have 7 wraps around our arm when we do this. You know, all of this is very symbolic and very important to them. Now, what happens? What's the danger when you have a ritual?
Disruption.
Becomes a ritual, yeah.
It becomes an end in itself. And that's what happens because Jesus talks about it in Matthew 23 when he comes at them with his woes. Everything and he could reference the teaching of the law and the Pharisees do is done for people to see. So they make their phylacteries wide and the tassels, the tzitzit, on their garments long. So when you saw a Pharisee, there was no denying who he was because he wanted you to see it. So that while you can see it, it's in the scriptures, it's in the command. They're trying to take seriously the command of God. The danger in anything, and that's for us today too, even though we might not have the same traditions or whatever, is that these rituals become empty of their meaning and become the end in themselves. You know, why do you go to church? Is going to church the end? No, going to church for a Christian is not the end. Like I went to church, I've accomplished something. You might or you might not. The end is God, to seek God, to worship God. And so people can go to church and they can be there and it can be totally meaningless. but it's the ritual, so they feel good that they've done it. Is it? No. And so this was the case when we talk about, I made a mess. There it is. Ritual acts. This is the kind of thing. So these are the things that for them, all out of the laws of the Hebrew Bible. This is their moral code. And it's their ritual acts that sometimes come out of this moral code and empty the moral code of its morality. They become the end. Now let's talk about worldview. When we talk about worldview for Jewish folks, we have to consider it from several angles, because even in Jesus's day, there were different, we might say, I guess you'd call them sects of Judaism. These were primarily religious leaders. When we think about Pharisees and Sadducees, these are two leading groups that look at things very differently. And the one that I learned, and I'm sure it wasn't original with my teachers, the Sadducees, one of the big differences, what's that?
Oh, sorry. That you see.
They're sad, you see, because they don't believe in the resurrection. This became, in fact, Paul in Acts uses that to start a fight when he's about to get in trouble by bringing that up, because he knew as a former Pharisee that he could set him off. The third group is the Essenes. These are the more mystical. So they had a whole different idea. One Essene you may be familiar with, his name is John the Baptist. We think he may have fallen into this group. So when you think about John the Baptist, he's not in the norm of society. He's kind of on the out there, the outfit he wears, the things he lives. Another place you might be familiar with Essenes is if you've ever heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's largely believed that community on the Dead Sea that got away from the city of Jerusalem, kind of out by themselves, was made up of Essenes. Of these three, the predominant one that lasted the tradition of the Pharisees, these were the people's religious people. They had the most sway. The Sadducees were the ones who kind of had the inside of the temple and the most political connections with Rome that kept them in a place of power. And the Essenes are the ones that just wanted to get away from everything because all of it in their mind was corrupt.
Was John the Baptist considered part of the Essenes? Yes, that's what I thought.
So the Pharisees of these three, their view of things, their traditions are really what went forward. But that's 2,000 years ago. So today we don't have Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. We have different expressions of Judaism. One of them would be the Orthodox. These are the most strictly adherent to the laws of Torah. These are the ones that, when we talk about Hasidic Jews, they're a subset of these. In fact, the Orthodox, I need to check my notes because I came across a few things that would be important in this. So when you think about Orthodox, we typically think Hasidic, but the Hasidic Jews are actually a subset of the ones that you think of with the big hats and the black suits and the women, like we talked about, and the head coverings and stuff. The Hasidic, the one you think about them is the curls, right? Usually they have that identifies them. They're a subset of what are called the Haredi, Haredi, which are some of the most strict Hasidic, or a subset under them. Typically, these Orthodox limit contact, particularly those Haredi and Hasidic, with the outside world. If you're a Hasidic Jew, you're living in a Hasidic neighborhood. And you're doing most that you can to stay in that Hasidic neighborhood. To the point of their dress and what I said earlier, that we saw, we're in Jerusalem, and we're driving and we see this group walking down the sidewalk that several in our tour said, "Oh, look, they're Muslims. Look at the Muslims over there." And our tour guide said, "No, those aren't Muslims. Those are Jews," because they were dressed head to toe in black, only their eyes showing. So these are pretty strict. They're very patriarchal. We would see the women must observe certain things. The ones on the plain were the ones that we learned about the head and the wigs, that they all wore wigs. The only people who could ever see them without their wigs was their husbands. Something about
His ownership, sort of.
probably that's a good word.
Yeah. From what I
Unfortunately,
understood when I was.
not a great word, but
No,
It's-
he's
Yeah.
pretty accurate, yeah. See some documentaries on Netflix, it'll. Well,
it is, so these are, now the Orthodox aren't only that. You don't have to be Hasidic, you don't have to be to that extreme there, but in general, what we identify with the strictest sects is a small part of the greater Orthodox community. If you want to see an Orthodox community, some Hasidics, I'm sure, go to Miami Beach.
Oh, sure, it's
On
like,
Saturday.
live near the synagogue.
And because they're gonna be in that community, you're gonna see them all walking on Saturday, because you can't drive on Saturday, they have to live close enough. Now, there are certain different branches that have a different, so Orthodox, the strictest. Reform are gonna be, well, they're gonna kind of be the loosest, the most modern. That they don't believe you have to strictly follow the Torah. The Torah was intended for the ancient peoples. We don't live in an ancient world, so we try to get some of the principles and figure it out. But what you see a lot in Reform Judaism is the emphasis on what we might call social justice issues. Why would that be an emphasis of Reform Judaism? Read the Minor Prophets. It was an emphasis of much of the Old Testament prophetic word about the poor and the widow and the orphan and the stranger. Much of that. So the Reform Jews, they're probably going to go to their tabernacle, but it's going to look a lot different than the Orthodox observance. And then the mid ground are the conservative. They want to follow the Torah, but they say because we're thousands of years removed from the days of Moses, we have to make some accommodation. So if you're a conservative, if you're an Orthodox Jew, you walk to tabernacle. If you're a Reformed Jew, you may or might not go to tabernacle. If you're conservative, you drive. Because, come on, we have cars. Why are we walking everywhere? That's ridiculous. It's a different world now. So there's a lot of modern criticism of the text. This is a balance between the two. We think the traditions are important, but we think they've gone too far. And so typically those are there are a couple of others that we could talk about, but these are going to influence, when we talk about worldview, the way this person views the world and lives is a lot different than the way this person views the world and lives. The way, and that's going to be a little bit different. So you see how I put this section under that because it affects how they interact with the world. And our faith should affect how we interact with the world and how we view the world. And that's the case here. Where are we next? Social organization. I took my watch off. I don't know where we are.
7.
Okay.
The Reform and conservatives, if they have to eat certain foods like the Orthodox do.
They're not as strict. The Orthodox are going to be kosher only. The Reform may eat bacon every morning. The conservative is probably going to largely keep kosher, but not mind bending the rules.
Yeah, they probably don't eat pork, but they probably.
They might have
okay if
lobster.
their butters. Well, okay, maybe the butter's not kosher, something like that,
I
right?
worked with a teacher who was what we said was conservative, and she treated her religion about like a lot of Christians treat Easter and Christmas. It was that she went on the high holy days and that kind of thing, but
She'd probably be closer to Reform than if she did that.
Necessarily.
Oh, really?
See, because here's what we need to understand. One thing to understand about Judaism. Even the Orthodox aren't necessarily super religious. It's more of their culture.
Yeah, it's
Sure. Yeah.
We're getting on a plane to go to Israel. And there was a Hasidic dad with his son that was there, going to get on the same plane. And so, let's have a conversation. They're going there because it's his bar mitzvah. And to have your bar mitzvah in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount is the bomb diggity. He didn't say that, that's my word. So we're talking to him. We said, oh, that's so cool. And they've got the hat, they've got the curls. And in the conversation, we were asking them about, where they're in Boston. Well, we don't really go to church that much. We don't really go to temple. It's really more, I was raised this way. This is just kind of how my family does things. I'm like, wow. So when we talk about how you worship God, it wasn't religious, it was cultural.
That's my first watch.
And if you talk to them about the Old Testament, you would probably be surprised how little they would know. Now, we didn't give them a quiz or anything like that, but overall, in Judaism, this is the reality. Though it is a faith and has religious elements, for many people, it's mostly a cultural identity.
That's how it was explained to me when I was coming up. Oh, my friends, that because we would have dinner at airports, whether they could talk that dinner, sure. And what I was told was, because quarter of them were Orthodox. At any rate, my point is, I would ask, well, why are we eating this kosher food this way? We're about to have pork around. And what I was explained was that 2,000 years ago, they had to keep these strict dietary rules because they didn't have refrigeration. They didn't have it. What we have today to keep it pure. They didn't eat pork because pork would get poisoned easily back then. And it was to stay healthy at 2,000 years ago. And that's why they did it then. And of course, now they recognize it and practice it out of respect because they're elders.
Right. So it's what we've been taught by our culture.
Right. It was handed down.
Not necessarily because God said.
Exactly.
So we look at it.
They did it then because it kept getting sick.
And as I said last week, when we talked about kosher laws, there have been things found that there are certain value in some of the kosher laws, nutritionally and health-wise, if you follow them.
And so they respect it now because it's been handed down. Generation. But they got refrigeration now and they have cooking now. So, yeah.
Exactly. So the point being,
interesting.
And it was kind of my last thing I was going to talk, like when interacting with, or we might say evangelizing with a Jewish person, one of the things we can't assume is this is a highly religious person, even if the externals seem to point that way. They may just be culture. That this is how I was raised and this is how we do things. And they may have very little knowledge of the actual text of the Hebrew Bible. They learned as a bar mitzvah, they learned how to read it because they had to stand up in front of everybody and read it. So, you better know at least what the alphabet is and how to say the words. But the religious aspect is not there. Now, having said that, there is a social reality to the religious faith. And again, there's an evolution, just like we have Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes. We go back to first and second temple Judaism. First temple Solomon, second temple Herod primarily, Ezra, Nehemiah through 70 AD. The social organization revolved around the temple and the sacrificial system and the holy days. Because you went to the temple for those holy days. So as we think about socially our families and Christmas, you said Christmas and Easter or somebody said Christmas and Easter. We have all those traditions around them. First and second temple Judaism, the temple really was the organizing structure of the whole society. Everything revolved around it. Out of that, the next stage, when the temple's gone, is what's typically called rabbinic Judaism. And the simple definition of rabbinic Judaism is anything that happens after the temple's destroyed. And so rabbis, which had a place in the first and second temple period. In fact, there are those who look at Jesus and try to look at his ministry as a rabbinic ministry of bringing followers and disciples and apprentices alongside and training them and the like. Rabbinic Judaism is what follows. When I told you, like Hillel and Shammai were two rabbis that disagreed. They were I think they were Pharisees. They were kind of high up the ladder that disagreed. We have this split. Are you in the tradition of Hillel? Are you in the tradition of Shammai? It's kind of coalesced in the Talmud later. But even then, in the Gemara, these rabbinic traditions are the conversations that exist across the next 1,000 years, from 500 AD to 15 or 1600 AD, of different rabbis having their interpretive discussions about what the Talmud means. And so rabbinic Judaism is important until we get kind of down to the modern synagogue, where socially this is not the center. Now, maybe in an Orthodox community, you could see how the synagogue is vitally important because we all live within walking distance and we're in a Jewish neighborhood. And so that defines, but outside of that, it's hard to define any sort of Jewish social organization for a reform or conservative, because that identity isn't so much, that religious identity isn't shaping their worldview enough that the social importance of a synagogue or a rabbinic tradition or a temple influences them. Is that my last slide? Okay, good. That's 75. So that's kind of where we're going to leave all of that. Did I talk about all of these stuff? Any questions? No, the evangelism section, real quick. In case you're wondering, if you were going to have a conversation with a Jewish person, I don't think EE is the best way to go. Because what is going to happen, and I mean that sort of memorized, will you go to heaven when you die, the sin, blah, blah, blah. I think one of the things that we have in common with the Jewish people is a set of scriptures. And the people that became Christians in the New Testament became Christians based upon what Bible?
The Old Testament.
The Hebrew Bible, not the New Testament. They were living and writing the New Testament, right? So if you want to evangelize with Jewish people, you can use freely the Old Testament. If you want to use a New Testament to start the conversation, Matthew is a really good gospel because he's written to Jewish people, and throughout it talks about the fulfilled prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. So you can just go through Matthew and see where it says, and this happened such that this was fulfilled, and talk about potentially that as well. But again, don't assume that they know a lot of the Old Testament. Don't assume that they even realize, there are many Jews that don't realize Jesus himself was Jewish, and the earliest Christians were Jewish. They think of Christianity as something different, or that Jesus converted to Christianity. By the way, last evangelism thing, to say convert to a Jewish person means to them, if you want to become a Christian, if you want to convert to Christianity, you have to disown your family and be ready for them to disown you. It's not a great word in Judaism. So in those conversations, if you get that opportunity, as with any evangelistic situation, building relationships, finding points of commonality, and with a Jewish individual, we have built-in points of commonality, but not assuming too much and being aware that for them, conversion is a negative. Even if you don't use the word, do you want to convert to Christianity? In a Jewish person's mind, to become a Christian is thought to be a big deal and a negative, and would have a negative impact potentially on their family. Now, maybe not so much in conservative or reform, but certainly in an Orthodox situation or a more Orthodox situation. Just a few notes on that. So I'll stop talking and see if you have any more questions that I have to do on. Are we good online, people?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Are we good in person, peoples?
I lived with a Jewish woman, and she said the most major difference is that they don't recognize Jesus as
the Messiah,
yeah,
as the
Messiah,
right,
but more as a person.
He may have been for them depending. Some may say he was a good moral teacher. Some may say I'm going to use the word they won't, that he was a traitor to Judaism because he abandoned it or he disowned it in a Jewish person's mind. And again, it's a negative about Jesus. So if you can connect Jesus's Jewishness, that might be a good place to begin a conversation. It's probably not going to be a 5-minute presentation that they're going to go, oh, please. It might be. God can work in mysterious ways. But typically there are lots of hurdles that they may have to overcome to accept that. All right, I'm going to pray, and then we're going to go. That's okay. Father in heaven, we thank you for your love and grace for us. We thank you for this rich history that we share with the people of the Jewish faith, the scriptures that come out of your activity among them, setting them aside, establishing them, and bringing the Messiah out of the nation of Israel and the tribe of Judah. Father, we thank you for what we can learn from them and about them. And I ask, Lord, that you would help us better understand, if we ever have the opportunity, a chance to talk matters of faith with someone with a Jewish background, the best ways to approach that through the guidance of your Spirit and the wisdom that he can bring. Lord, bless us now as we wrap up tonight, as we go to our homes, and as we have the rest of the week in front of us. Help us to be used for your kingdom purposes, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.